And one of the reasons for that is the way we have been conditioned. Dick Gregory said it the right way. We have been taught how to make a living, not how to live. So we go out there, and if we go to apply for a job, they ask us for a resume, and we put a lot of things about what we did, how many years we studied, and everything, right? Because we want to impress our employer. But how many of us could actually do a resume on what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a child, what it means to be a parent or a grandparent? Of course we know, and we should know by now, that a male could be defined as a biological creature. A man and a woman must be cultivated in the principles of manhood and womanhood. A child doesn't have to learn how to be a child, but a mother has to learn how to be a mother. Likewise a father. So in this section, let's look at that I like to say, let's go back to the beginning, right? I want to talk a little bit about light energy. Based on the research I've done, Dr. Joel Pokram and Reverend Phil Valentine and others, I tend to summarize the information, put it in my brain computer, and try to come up with an idea that I feel I can relate to my people. According to our scholars, everything in the universe is light energy. Everything is light. So if everything is light, then we have to ask, why do I see something as something? As a matter of fact, we also know that everything is nothing more than an illusion that we have created. So why do I see the tree as a tree? Why do I see the dog as a dog? Why do I see the table as a table, or whatever it is? Based on what my research has shown, according to the function of any entity, whatever the function is, it has to vibrate at a frequency, and the frequency that is vibrating at is what is manifested as that entity. In other words, the tree has a function, and in order to carry out its function, is that light is vibrating at a certain frequency, and that is what we see as the tree. Likewise likewise the animal, or whatever it is, right? So for our discussion, and we don't have to remember all the details, I like how Phil Valentine said, these are information that's coded in our genetic blueprint. In the interest of our enemy, they create a system of distraction so that this information is suppressed. So when we share the information, even though you may not understand it, it's like a switch, it's like a trigger, right? So don't worry if you don't understand what I'm saying, and don't try to. It will marinate, whether now or at some point. So what we are saying is that everything is light energy. For our discussion then, let us look at something graphic, maybe a lion or a tiger or a deadly snake, right? Or automobile coming to you at 100 miles per hour, whatever it is, right? Based on what we have been taught, let us assume that whatever entity is there is carrying a light energy within it, right? Based on our perception, and that's the key, of a lion or a tiger, its capacity because of its energy to potentially destroy us, right? We could say this could carry 1,000 pounds of energy which could destroy us, right? Based on our perception, because the reason why it's important to understand perception, at a particular time in our story, when we were operating at a certain spiritual level, we could communicate with the lion, we could communicate with the tiger, so we never saw it as a threat. Because no animal will kill another animal unless maybe it wants to feed or its life is in danger. So an animal, they're not a threat to us. But based on our deviation from our spiritual being and our reckless abuse of nature, these entities pick up that negative vibration, so they see us as a threat. So now, our perception of the potential of a lion or a tiger killing us, our perception plus the potential energy, let us call that the thought. So here you have the light energy and our perception of it. Let us call that the thought, right? And I will ask a question. We think with the brain, right, ma'am? Suppose I say we don't think with the brain. For our discussion, we will define the brain as a neurotransmitter according to Dr. Joel Pokram. Neuro refers to what? What organ in the body?
The brain.
The nerves.
The nerves.
You know what the nerves carry, the function of the nerve. It's like the conduit through which the energy goes through. The nerve is not the energy. The nerve is like the wire that light is going through. The wire is not the energy. Right? So the nerve, the neuro, and I said transmitter. What does a transmitter do?
Impulse.
It receives and sends information. So we, for our discussion, we will define the brain as a neurotransmitter, right? I explained to you that here in front of you, everything is happening in less than 1 second. You see a lion coming at you, you see a tiger, a deadly animal coming towards you, and you perceive that it's going to destroy you. So within that flash of a second now, the brain receives that information. It is, you don't think with the brain, but it's a part of the thinking process. So the brain receives that information and sends a message to the body to respond to that situation. What is the number one law in the universe? Self-preservation. So the brain is actually going to remind the body, if you don't do something, you're going to die. All of this is happening in a second. I am doing a presentation, so it's taking me minutes to explain it. But remember, these are just boom, 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 things happening. I see a lion, and I respond. But based on how magnificent a creature we are, all of this thing is happening, all of this processing is taking place. You follow? So now the brain receives that information and it is going to instruct the body to take action to respond to that situation. The process that is important in this is understanding the role that the blood plays in the body. The blood in the body is similar to the gasoline in your car. You hit that accelerator and you have no gasoline, where you going?
Nowhere.
You have no blood, where you going?
Nowhere.
It is unfortunate that I have to use the description in the opposite way. You follow? The gas was not here before the blood. You follow? The neurotransmitter was not here before the brain. But for description, whenever we do a presentation, we have to remind people of that. So now, the brain receives this information and sends a message to the body to respond to this situation. That is done through the blood, right? What happens is that the blood arranges itself, they say configure itself, to facilitate or actualize whatever you think about. So if I'm angry, the blood is going to arrange itself. I'm not saying I'm going to take a vitamin tablet or put something. That is the genius. That is what the Bible is talking about. God made man in his image. The brain receives that information and the blood arranges itself to accommodate or actualize that information. So for our discussion, let us, and what, now that we are in danger, there's a concept in psychology called what? Flight or? Fight or fright. And what is the substance that kicks into the system? Chemical? Adrenaline. So let us assume for our discussion that when you're sleeping, you need 5 pounds of adrenaline for your body to be normal. And then you wake up 10 pounds. And then you're walking 20 pounds. And then you're running 40 pounds. Now that your blood is now that your life is in danger, the body would automatically perhaps produce about 200 pounds more adrenaline. So that is why you see a woman gets in an accident, her baby is under the car, and what does she do?
Get the car off the baby.
What gives her the resources to do that?
The adrenaline.
Remember, that adrenaline wasn't injected by a needle. No savior come down from heaven and say, put the adrenaline in your system. That is the incredible capacity of your divine being. So you get this extra adrenaline in your system. You could jump over a building. You could grab that tiger and feel you could choke it to death. So that same woman now, after that child comes out and that car comes back down, she's out. She's burnt up that extra adrenaline. That particular substance was not designed to operate in the body normally. The body will disintegrate. But look how incredible the body is, that it could make that adjustment and you burn it off when you come back to normal. That's the physical. Now let's get down to the real part of it, which we should have been taught in grammar school or kindergarten school, because that's what we were taught in Africa. They can measure your emotions now, and they can tell you your emotions when you're angry, when you're... By the way, the two most deadly emotions, could you tell me the two most deadly emotions?
Anger, fear.
Fear is one, and grief.
Grief.
And the two most, and they could and the two most positive emotions, love and faith. They could measure it, right? And we also know every emotion is tied to an organ in the body. So fear affects the kidney, right? If you have problem loving, it affects your heart. If you're bitter and backbiting and bad-minded, it causes cancer. If you are unable to express yourself, you get all kind of sinus and all kind of things. So all emotions are tied into organs in the body. Now, what role does that play in our life? Now, every emotion, just like that situation with the physical danger, every emotion, the brain sends a message to the body to facilitate that emotion. So for our discussion, suppose when you're angry, the body takes on the form of a diamond. Or when you're happy, it takes on the form of a square. Or when you're sad, it may take on the form of a triangle. In other words, whatever you give thought to, thought is light energy. I explain what thought is. Whatever you give thought to, the body arranges itself through the blood to actualize that thought. Let's get down to business now. Let's make a baby. Can we? I heard Minister Farrakhan with that expression long ago. That sperm and that egg is coming together. 10 to 100 million sperm is released. And you know there's a battle that goes on and only one survives. That's you.
It's me.
Right?
It's me.
And you know it's the same with the egg. In that sperm is all the information about the male. If he's drinking at the time, if he's smoking, whatever he's thinking, that's in that sperm. In addition to that, everything that he inherited from his ancestors.
That applies with the female as well?
It applies to the female as well, to the egg. So, what degree did that sperm have to fight off all of those other sperm? Did it graduate from preschool?
Not as we know, but not as I know.
Did the egg graduate from preschool?
No, not as I know.
What degree did that sperm have to know that it has to swim up the fallopian tube? What degree did that egg have to know that it has to send a signal to that sperm so that they can meet? Did it graduate from grammar school?
No.
And when they meet, that new life is formed through that explosion, as the explosion referred to in the formation of the earth, right?
Right.
It swims up the fallopian tube, and what does it do? It clings to the walls of the uterus. And what does it begin to feed on? Which blood? The one that the white man taught us is dirty?
No.
The menstruum.
Yeah.
That is the richest blood in the body,
What blood was that?
just like the sperm. So when we release that sperm, brother man, it takes at least 6 weeks for our body to rebuild that. So we could go ahead letting it go every night. We're going to talk about that a little later on. And there's a way you can release it in your body. A man is not supposed to release his sperm unless he's going to impregnate a woman.
Correct.
And it doesn't mean that you can't have sexual pleasure, so that's another story for another time.
Yeah.
Right? And likewise that egg. So when they tell you, that's why when the African woman was going through her cycle and they put her in certain things, it was not because she was dirty. It because of the level, the vibration. She was vibrating at such a high frequency that that's the time they came together and could solve problems. And what the white man says, she's dirty. And by the way, what women are seeing as menstruation is not menstruation, it's hemorrhaging. Because she's supposed to be only losing a certain amount of blood. But because of the toxic thinking and the chemicals she's consuming, that's why she tends to live longer than men. The body is releasing a lot of that through that process. That's another story for another time.
Yeah.
And by the way, why do you think a birth control pill works? Anybody could tell me?
It's a blockage of some kind.
When the woman becomes pregnant, certain hormones are produced in the body telling her that she's pregnant and she can't get pregnant again. She wouldn't be going through ovulation and all of that. Because she goes through ovulation, by the way, that's the best form of birth control. If a woman is functioning properly, she would know when those eggs fall down in the uterus, and for those 2 or 3 days she wouldn't have sex. Natural birth control. Are you with me? Am I leaving you? If I'm getting too high or too low, let me know. You know? Well, give me an amen then.
Nah, amen.
All right.
Amen.
All right. Now, so it clings to the walls of the uterus. And by the way, as I was saying about the birth control pill, so the birth control pill was supposed to be a synthesis of that pregnancy. So the birth control pill is telling the woman she's not pregnant. Now listen carefully to what has happened to us as a people. God, in his infinite wisdom, and I'll deal with that at another time, I'll use the word now. I prefer to use the supreme being, the divine, decided that a woman should be pregnant for how many months? 9 months, right? What happens when a woman uses a birth control pill for 5 years? What is she telling her body? That she's pregnant for 5 years. If people claim that God is omnipotent, omnipresent, and omniscient, and determine that the appropriate time is 9 months, that person is rising above God. And that's why they fill up the gynecology clinic. Women long ago, I'm not saying they had their own health to deal with. They could have 10 and 12 children and they don't even have to go to a gynecologist. Today, the women's body are ruined with all the madness that they have allowed themselves to be indoctrinated into. But let's get back to the story. So now that sperm and that egg has come together, formed a new life, it begins to fit in the uterus. Let's tie this in now to the light, the thought, and the emotion. Remember what I told you? Every thought, right, is being processed through the blood. And what is the baby feeding on?
Blood.
So when the mother is angry, she is vibrating at that frequency of anger. the body is feeding on that and the baby starts vibrating at what? That frequency. If she's happy, so if I want to make money and hustle money, I could say I'm some mystic man. And I could spend some time with you and almost tell you what you were going through while your mother was having you and make big money, scientifically. Whatever the mother is experiencing becomes a part of her bloodstream. Remember, the sperm and the egg contains information about both parties. But once that sperm leaves the man, the woman is in control of that. So therefore, the woman is responsible for shaping the mental capacity and outlook of the child. Therefore, the nation. You could not walk into the average society in the world, especially any African society, and see a woman unless you went through some heavy spiritual barriers. Because the very breath of a man can change the chemistry of a woman. Are you listening?
Oh, yeah.
You sure?
Oh, yeah.
Can I get a hallelujah?
Hallelujah. Wait.
Very breath.
So could you imagine? And I'm not even telling you yet that when a man and a woman releases that sperm, when they engage in a sexual activity, your whole energy opens up like a camera and takes in the energy of that other person. Every person that slept with, you have now slept with that person. And whatever karma they have, you're now carrying it. So if that woman sleeps with a murderer, how do you call it? Freedom of sex? Serious business, my people. So let me see if I can conclude this section, and then we get to question and answers. Could you, one of my books there, the third one there? The third one. Right? Now, this was me. This is my 20s. Of course, the girls was attracted to that, right? Kind of lucky. I met some beautiful ones. Right? Misused them and abused them. I wasn't no woman beater or anything like that. But I'm not proud of the ignorance that I lived. I have no regrets. I try not to regret in life. But I would not have done it the way I did. People would not have, I say I abused them, people would never say that. They looked upon me as a playboy. Right? So because I was fortunate, I met many women, not too much. The ones that brought comfort into my life without pain, I got tired of them. Quick time I got it. The ones that brought comfort with pain, I held on to them tenaciously as most of us do. And women do the same thing. What does that have to do with what I just said? When my mother was having me, she told me she went through some difficulties with my father. Right? And of course, going through the pain and everything, and you just went through and say how that affected me feeding on her bloodstream. Or even after I came out from the womb and I'm nursing from her breast, I'm still, her breast milk is her body chemistry, right? So now, let's say I'm nursing from her breast, and maybe my father abused her. And all those emotions is now in her. She's hurting. I'm a little baby. As a baby, I know I need the breast. But I'm not qualified to say, my mama is in pain and I'm just going to take the part of the breast that's nourishing The part with the pain, I would need, no, I'm taking in all. So what am I taking in? Comfort with pain. I'm vibrating at the frequency of comfort with pain. So that's why when the woman came into my life and brought me comfort with pain, I don't want to let go of them. And I was figuring it out until I heard this presentation by Dr. Joel Pukram. Oh, that is it. That's important to know, especially if you consider yourself to be conscious, so you would know what is responsible for shaping the mental capacity and outlook of our children, therefore our nation. I told you it was going to be heavy.
Oh, yeah.
But you'll never be the same again. And we need to bring this to our community. Right, Mom?
Right.
Does it make sense?
This makes
Absolutely correct.
That's a new modernized term for I remember. It makes sense. That's what we're saying. I remember.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So, here's what we'll do, and I get back to that, because I can talk a little bit about the family. Let me just, okay, so we talk about pregnancy. In my book, I broke down Dr. Amos Wilson, Beyond Pregnancy Now. You get all that information there, the impact of the social thing. Later on, from Chancellor William book, The Destruction of Black Civilization, what the young people are supposed to do. And then later on with Phil Valentine and others, what a mature person is supposed to do, and so on, right? So now I'm going to do a brief review of, let's say, family, right? Based on what I've said to you, we understood certain things, so that when you lived in, I'm kind of going back to an ancient society that was more moral and so, right? Based on that quality, by the way, that personality would also, we choose our parents and all of that. I wouldn't have time to go into that. But basically what I want to say, here we are in a community. We're living now, right?
Right.
During the early stages, you give a child a toy. If you live in a farming community, most likely you will give that child a little toy to deal with farming. Or if you live in a fishing community, a little toy. You make it. You didn't go to Walmart and buy it. So the whole process was learning. The child is learning as they go along, right? Now that the child reached the age of puberty, the hormones kick in, and now we say you could be pregnant. We didn't go out and tell our children, you don't go out there and have sex. No. We would explain to our children, sex is a natural part of the process of life. It is a divine gift, but it must be done in the right place at the right time with the right person in order to get the right result. So we didn't have to tell them to use condoms. You follow? And we, in our lectures, say that to our young people, and they appreciate it. You try that with young people and see if they won't respond. You see, they never heard that before. Sex is a divine gift provided by the universe, but it must be done in the right place at the right time with the right person in order to get the right result, right? So what you wanted to do is to let them in so many ways know that now you are entering puberty. Didn't mean you have to jump in bed then, but you go through a preparation stage, because there's a consequence to sex, which of course one of the main one is you're going to have babies. And along with babies come responsibility. We didn't expect the state to take care of our babies, right? So along with that comes responsibility. So it's very important to understand that. So how do we approach puberty? Rites of passage, I know you've heard about it. That's when rites of passage step in. It didn't mean that you weren't taught before. It just means that now is the time for you to be more focused. You have a certain level of maturity, which I broke down in that book on a family affair, and you need to get a copy of that. So now that you have a certain level of maturity, this is what you have to do. You as the men are the providers and such, so therefore you have to now focus more on taking care of a family, of the resources to provide for the family. And likewise, the females now have to learn more about how you take care of a family, right? I haven't done this presentation for a while, so I might be a little bit rusty, but I think I'll catch up as I go along, right? So now, if you're living in a fishing community, you go out there. I didn't put you in a, first to begin, this whole idea about going into a classroom. That's not Africa. The Europeans were living in an abnormal climate. They had to find a place to keep their children during the winter time so they wouldn't die or freeze to death. So that's why they had to stay in the caves, and that's why that education process was developed. Common sense could tell you, and your children show you, that there's no way you could put a child to sit down 8 hours a day. When that child come out of that classroom 20 years later and want to stand up on the corner, you call them lazy when you actually made them lazy. Even when I was growing up, most of our classes, we had classroom structure, but a lot of our classes, especially when it's hot, would be underneath the tree outside. That's where we educated our people. So if we were on the boat fishing, sun, that's the sea, that's the angle. When you see it's operating like this, when you see the clouds are moving like this is the direction the fishes are going in. So your education was that nature. If you're in the garden, this is the moon, this is the that's the that. So now you begin to focus more on that. It's no longer a toy boat. You're dealing with the real boat now. But you had enough practices with the toy boat. It's no longer a dolly for a girl. Now you're going to deal with babies. You work with the woman. So let us assume, oh, and by the way, as you know, with football or basketball, the white man still do it in a sophisticated way when he set up all these little leagues and so. Because you know what you had to do is that energy that energy that's being aroused now, you don't try to suppress it or stop it. You redirect it into productivity. So when you get that kid, like in that basketball game, all excited, and I'm not talking about NBA where people are warring, but long ago when you played sport, you saw the excitement in it. Those boy children would get so excited fishing and going through the jungle and doing things. And by the end of the day, you redirected the energy. So that when I sit in a classroom nowadays and they put me there with a girl at the age of puberty, I'm just sitting there watching her.
Right.
Because my nature is telling me I want her. I'm dulling my mind. We didn't put them in that situation. That's why they separated men and women. Because we know how those energies work. So we redirected those energies. So the girls will be so caught up helping mommy take care of the child and thing, and but in a joyful way, not as a slave.
Right.
That at the end of the day, but let us assume now you reach the stage, I have to kind of jump ahead, and I decide, boy, I see this girl and I like her. I just had a sister that visited me from Fiji. She was in her 30s, married. And she refused to sit at that table unless I sit and eat. That's her culture. And she would tell me in her culture, she didn't have an option to go out there and talk to a man about the relationship. The man had to approach her father. It's still happening in some culture. And I'm not talking in some of these religious distortion, I want to buy your daughter. The guy has an interest. He takes that information to the father through protocol. Sometimes he has to send it to a friend. I have an interest in your daughter. And unlike some of the religious and other practices today, it was not to sell the daughter in African culture. And then he sends a note. The father informs the daughter of this guy's interest in her. She had a choice. If she say no, you forget it, brother. If she says she's interested, a process begins. The girl's family begin to investigate the background of the guy. How did he respond to his training, his rites of passage? Was he catching fishes, or was he sitting on the boat smoking ganja all day? This is my daughter. I love her. I am the man. I sacrifice. I know what it is to raise her. So when I put her into the hands of another man, I want to make sure that he could give her at least what I offer her and more, because I wasn't raping my daughter. I didn't have that sick, degenerate mind, because I would have known that to violate my daughter is to violate myself. So that's why you investigate the background of the male. But not only that, you also investigate the background of the female. How was she responding to being a mother? Was she just sitting down all day polishing her nails and putting on lipstick? How is she going to raise my children? I'm not saying women, it's natural for them to beautify. Nothing wrong with that. But when that becomes more important than the fundamentals, it's a no-no. Two people angry, oh no, I wouldn't say angry. Two people hot-tempered, it wouldn't work. And that's not choosing. I told you where they have preference of choice. But this is common sense now. We're not going to put two people together who's hasty. You got to blend that in. But let's say everything is approved. Now, we're going to decide they're going to get married. And we said 3 or 5 years. Now, we are going to let the family begin to relate to each other. Because it was no man and woman that was going to make that marriage successful. The families are there to ensure that that marriage will be successful. I want to show you. Compare that today. I go and I meet a girl down the street in a bar. I like how she looks. We get married 6 years late, 6 months after. Who the hell is you? You follow? So now we agree on marriage. The boy, the male now have to give a dowry to the female. It's not like these Arabs selling out their children. I will sell my daughter. A dowry, you heard about the dowry. Let's put it in its true perspective. What was the dowry for? And a dowry for the average woman may have been about $500,000 in those days, if you value it today. What was that dowry for? That dowry was like an insurance policy, so that you do not have family court, or what they call it, maintenance, or what they call it, alimony, or what? In other words, if I, as the male, mess up, the woman has $500,000 in her bank account. So if I'm no longer supporting the children, that is there for that. It's like an insurance policy. And if the woman messes up, her family have to pay that back with interest, because the children have to be taken care of. Are you with me? You see the you see the life that we have been taken away from. family. My book, A Family Affair. So now, as I said, that dowry, so that now, this is interesting now. Imagine now, $500,000. I'm 25 years of age. I haven't earned that kind of money. Where am I going to get that money from? My family, right? My family raises $500,000 to ensure that I have a successful thing because they were about family. Now I see a next girl and I decide to leave my wife. Do you think my family is going to raise another $500,000?
No.
Or this girl go and she messes up? Do you think her family? That's how serious we were as a people. That is, I think, just some ideas on what we